All right, here we are. That's John King over there. Good morning, John.
Hey, good morning, Peter.
And we have a special guest waiting for us on the phone this morning.
That's right. We've had Jonathan Model, the prior Montana Political Practices Commissioner, on Talkback many times, but he's been replaced. We have Jeff Mangan in that position now, and we have him on the air, and we just kind of wanted to introduce him to you and to ourselves, get him know him a little bit. So this, I guess you could call it the meet and greet episode.
There you go.
So welcome to the show, Jeff.
Hey, good morning, gentlemen.
Well, before we get too far, why don't you just tell us a little bit about your background and what you did before you ended up in the political practices position?
It's fairly simple. I spent some time in the Montana legislature from 99 to 2006, both in the House and the Senate. Other than that, I've been a businessman all my life and had a couple of businesses in Great Falls that my spouse and my better half is aptly running now, and excited to be in this position, working for the folks of the state of Montana.
I assume that your spouse and better half are the same entity?
Yeah. Yes.
Now, Jeff, this is Peter. My question is, are you nuts? Mostly because, please forgive the pun there, because this particular office has not been a very long-lived, office for a lot of folks. So they're in and they're out before they have a chance to find out where the bathroom is.
Well, I hope to change that. But to answer the first part of your question, I'm sure there might be a few folks that that might agree that I am a little nuts. No, I think it's something I've always had an interest in, and passionate about local government and transparency and those kind of things, and it was an opportunity that afforded itself. Had a lot of good folks on both sides of the aisle and encouraged me to move forward, and so I'm just happy to be here in this position.
Well, now, Jeff, do you have to be just a little bit of a crusader to have this job? Because you'll be investigating people of every political stripe, perhaps even bringing charges against them or bringing them up on some mistakes that they've made. So how are you approaching that? Do you see yourself as a crusader or a public servant or what?
I certainly don't see myself as a crusader. I would go with the latter if I had to pick one of those two terms. Public servant is more apt. To crusade, I'd have to go out and find, and there's plenty of complaints coming our way. I don't need to go out and might find more issues to burden the staff with and myself with here. I mean, they come to my desk and to the previous commissioner's desk fairly regularly. So there's enough work for everyone.
Do you think that Montana's political practices law makes it hard for first-time legislators? Just as a reporter looking at the law, sometimes it seems Byzantine and complex, and it would be difficult to follow all the rules and to even know all the rules because they're not easily expressible, it seems.
I'm not sure for first-time candidates, first-time legislators, for example. I guess it could be if they're not familiar with taking a look at the code. That's why we need to encourage and continue an education process from this office. It's certainly one of my goals to answer those what should be fairly simple questions. And what do I need to do, and when do I need it to do by, and exactly what information do I need to move forward. And it's not only the candidates in that role. It's when they folks like their campaign treasurer and those kind of things. I was asked that question in the Senate in confirmation, and I take a look at it. When I was a first-time candidate, I asked a good friend of mine who was a business owner to be my campaign treasurer because I knew that gentleman had a background in finance and recording and reporting income and expenditures, and that's what I needed in that role. And then we had to go to the campaign office and to the law to find out exactly what needs to be done. But those folks that when when your campaign treasurer is your spouse, or not necessarily your spouse, but your aunt or your uncle or a good friend, or
your
a
daughter?
friend, the neighbor, a friend of the family, thinking, oh, this might, those are the folks that I think we have to make sure that they understand exactly what they're getting themselves into, because it's a fairly significant investment of time, and there's some fairly significant consequences for not doing that job correctly.
Now, Jeff, do you see yourself as a bit of an educator, or are you simply at the end of the line where the complaint comes?
I want the office. I mean, I think the office has to fill that role of educator in some fashion, whether it's through the website, whether it's through our staff when people call in, whether, for example, we just had reports due. Lobbying reports were due on May 30th from 400 plus lobbyists in the state of Montana, and for those folks that hadn't gotten them in, there's a handful. The week before we emailed those contacts, and we emailed them again a couple of days later, and then on the day of the 30th, for the handful that still hadn't sent reports on, my staff called to remind them that they needed to get the report in. And so that's one way. That's one way we can educate. The other way is, we're not setting. We don't want to set anybody up to fail. We want them to get the information. The information's not for us. The information is for the people of the state of Montana. And if we remember that, remember the job we're doing, we have an obligation to make sure that everybody understands what they need to get in, why they need to get it in, and why it's important that we follow the guidelines and laws, so everyone has access to that information.
So one of the things you had mentioned to me yesterday that was eating up a lot of your focus was this Disclose Act. Mm-hmm. I was hoping maybe you could kind of explain the Disclose Act, its origins, and kind of what the process of activating it looks like.
I don't have time. I probably don't have enough time to explain. The Disclose Act was basically, our updated Campaign Finance and Practices Act from 2015, when we moved to more transparency. Based on some of the previous history of, without getting into the minutia, where, how people report, what they need to report, how timely they need to report, what information is the committees and other folks have to get in, so everybody understands when money is placed into a campaign or a ballot issue or those other things that the people of the state of Montana vote on, that folks can dive in, find out who's paying for it, what it is, and who's responsible for it. That way, they're more educated and better apt to make a decision on what's, how do they want to approach this candidate or this ballot issue.
Okay. Well, Jeff, we're up against a break, so hang on. We're going to come right back. 721-1290 is our number. We have 3 lines open. If you have a question for our new Commissioner of Political Practices, Jeff Mangan, he's right here on the phone with us. If you have a question, call us at 721-1290. Talk back, we're rolling right along. Our guest on the phone right now this morning from his office in Helena, Jeff Mangan, who is the Commissioner of Political Practices. And now, Jeff, one of the things that there was so much controversy swirling around that office for several years, because there were a lot of folks who thought that the former commissioner was kind of a partisan, kind of looking after his own party and a little bit had a chip on his shoulder for the other party. So I was wondering how you handle a situation like that.
It's been, believe it or not, that's been a common question. And let me first say that Commissioner Modell did an excellent job, and I've reviewed the decisions and what this office has done, and quite honestly, I can't see any partisanship. The decisions and the complaints that are before him are before him, and I'm in the same boat myself. Whether they come, whether it involves someone in the Democratic side or the Republican side or any other side, and I certainly didn't see anything where and crusaded. But and the other thing is Commissioner Model also, it basically had to shepherd in the Disclose Act and this whole new way of looking at reporting and campaign finance and ensuring that transparency. So he had a lot of things to work through and at the same time a lot of other things happening which I don't want to get into with other folks because we still have some open open litigation that it may have appeared just because of the cases that came before him that there's some perception that partisanship was there, but I think that's honestly all it was perception.
Well, I think a lot of that perception problem is in the nature of the appointment process for your position, right?
It could be.
I mean, even if you do agree with the political practices commissioner all the time as a Republican or some other party, the fact that the governor has a particular party and gets to put you into power, there's an appearance at least that there could be an alliance, and that's obviously a risk that Montanans should take with some caution.
Yeah, well, I think the way that the legislature selects 4 candidates, and they tightened up that law in the last couple of sessions. In this case, you have a Republican-led legislature. You have a Democratic governor. I, for example, went through that process. I can't speak for previous commissioners, although I do know it was a similar process. And then the governor selected from those candidates that the committee from the Montana legislature placed forward. I was lucky enough to be one of those names. Move forward, and then the governor, selected myself, and it's basically the same thing happened with the commissioner, or with Commissioner Model, and it's whether or not that can be, I can guarantee at some point from this day forward, I will be. Someone will consider me biased one way or the other, whether it's because I served as a Democrat, or it's because I have friends that are Republicans, or vice versa. Either way, I don't think, and I think that would happen to anybody in this position. No matter, as soon as you start putting out decisions that may affect. Negatively affect or positively affect, however you want to look at it, a party or the other party, there's going to be whispers of or stronger of that individual's partisan or biased or what have you, and that's something I'm going to have to wade through, and I'm not. I fully expect that to happen, and I can't change. I can't say. I can say. Not biased as the day is long. Convincing that is going to be based on me moving forward with the decisions that I have. Are they fair? Do they reflect what previous commissioners have done? Do they reflect the law? Do they reflect the investigation and the facts that were determined through that investigation and when they're presented to the commissioner? Those kind of things, and that's all I can do is point people back to those to try to make that determination whether or not someone was fair. And I can do the same thing with Commissioner Modal's decisions and those previous commissioners' decisions in this office. Is go back, take a look at the law, take a look at that decision. All the decisions are online. There's not a good decision, bad decision file. They're all there.
Well,
they can go in. All the supporting documents, all the supporting law is either within the decision or available.
But there is another process, right, before you get a decision published on whether or not you make a decision on something.
Yep.
Or whether it's in a hiatus.
Yep, you're right.
Then there's also the timing thing. Whether or not a decision is reached before an election. And I remember those are some of the times where I noticed that people were making the accusations against Mr. Modal. It was on timing, questions. It was on duration of focus, things like that. The little stuff, the nitpicky stuff, but stuff that obviously would directly impact a particular candidate in a particular race.
Right. Yeah, and I had no idea what. Honestly, I didn't follow the pros and cons of the previous commissioner's decisions going back and at what time. So, but I'm sure that happened, and I'm sure there were. There were decisions that he attempted to make before the election happened because of timing, and others may have been. I've got a couple on my desk right now that I'm finishing up from this past election in October, November, and it just wouldn't have been enough time to have those decisions made properly, in the span of a few days. It wouldn't have done the commissioner and the commissioner's office. It would have done them a disservice. It would have done the candidate or the ballot committee or the folks involved in the complaint a disservice, and it would have done the people of the state of Montana a disservice. Sure. to push through those. So, and to try to get something done so quickly that it.
You don't want to do slipshod work. That's
right.
For sure. Yeah, and I will say this: we do have one thing going for you. In your you were approved 49-1. So that's got to make you feel pretty good, right?
Yeah, I felt. I mean, I was surprised. To be honest with you, I hope to live up, up to that. To me, that indicates that the folks in the legislature believe that I will be fair and transparent in the work that I've been asked to do for these next 6 years, and it's something that I take very seriously, and it's a big responsibility and something that I plan to live up to.
Okay, we're going to come right back. Quick break here. Jeff Mangan's going to be with us for about 4 more minutes or so. So if you have a question or a comment, give us a call. 721-1290 is our number, and this is Talkback. We'll be right back. Talkback rolling right along, and we have Jeff Mangan, who is the just newly named Commissioner of Political Practices. And we do have a caller that wants to visit with you, so let's get him right on. This is Alan. Alan, you're on with Jeff Mangan. Go ahead.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning, Alan.
Jeff, I'm curious. You got a position that is very, very much in the public eye, and who is in position to fire the commissioner?
Well, there's a whole section of law, and to be honest with you, I haven't studied it myself because I don't expect to be breaking it.
I understand, but can the governor fire you, or does it take the legislature?
The commissioner can be removed for a variety of different things, the same kind of things that you would expect, malfeasance and those kind of things. So,
all right, thanks for your call, Alan.
Yeah, but it has to be for cause. It can't just because we don't like you.
Right.
And a lot of those things are notoriously difficult to prove.
Yeah.
You got to get in really tight space. Real quick question for you before we run out of time. Do you feel kind of as your job, you prevent out of, under the table spending, that sort of thing, that you're kind of outside in the rain holding up a cup trying to stop the water from hitting the ground? Because I kind of feel that way as just a citizen in Montana. We see all these ads flooding in, then there's not much you could do to stop it coming through.
I think that again, and it's something you'll hear from me for the next 6 years. I guarantee it. It's not me trying to stop, or not me trying to keep this open and sunshine. It's the people of the state of Montana that have demanded that we have openness and transparency and fairness, and so it's my job to assist, to make sure that they have all that information according to state law, so they can get their hands on it and make those kind of decisions they need to make, before they vote or before they decide on a specific candidate or ballot issue and those kind of things. But in the bigger scheme, it is. We need to ensure and let people know that if they're going to be spending dollars on a state campaign or a ballot campaign, those kind of things in Montana, they need to make sure that they report it in detail, and report in detail where that money's coming from, so the people of the state of Montana can make an informed decision on on the candidate or the ballot issue or any other issue that that they're making a decision on.
All right. Well,
Right.
thank you so much for joining us. We're all out of time.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you, gentlemen.
All right. We look forward to talking with you again, and hope it's always under pleasant circumstances, sir.
Sounds good. Thank you
All
much.
right. Thanks, Jeff.
Bye-bye.
There you go. What a nice guy.
Yeah.
I like him.
Well, speaking of sunshine,
For now.
there's a decision to be released on Peter.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. Really. Yeah, because I'm running for what? Old guy?
Yeah, well, you got that nailed.
Official
if
old
you
guy?
don't win this one.
Anyway, we're going to take a break. We have another hour yet to go. It's going to be open phones, and we need to make a decision as to what we're going to be doing while you're going on vacation.
That's right. I am going to go, and my sister is getting married finally.
Yay!
And so we're going to go have a good time.
Congratulations. So I'll be looking for our audience's input in the next hour. So 721-1290 is our number, and we're going to come right back after the top of the hour. Stay with us.